Captain Laura Bennett sat in the command chair of the diplomatic vessel Horizon's Edge, her fingers drumming a quiet rhythm on the armrest. The ship hummed with its usual peaceful energy, carrying a small crew of 20 through what was supposed to be a routine survey mission in the outer territories. Laura had been reviewing mineral reports when her communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, we have incoming ships. Multiple contacts," announced Wesley Cooper from his station, his young face tensing as the sensors lit up with warnings. Laura looked up at the main view screen. 6 massive warships emerged from the darkness of space, their hulls painted in the deep crimson colors of the Crythian Dominion. They moved with practiced precision, forming a perfect circle around the horizon's edge. Each vessel bristled with weapon arrays that could reduce her small ship to debris in seconds. "Shields up. But do not charge weapons," Laura ordered calmly. She had heard stories about the Crythians, a warrior species that had been expanding aggressively through this sector for the past 5 years. They preferred intimidation over negotiation, and they rarely gave second chances. The view screen flickered as an incoming transmission forced its way through their systems. A Crythian commander appeared on screen, his scaled face twisted in what Laura assumed was supposed to be threatening. His yellow eyes gleamed with confidence, and his 4 arms gestured dramatically as he spoke. "Human vessel, I am Commander Talvex of the Crythian Dominion's 3rd Fleet. You have entered territory claimed by our empire. You carry information we require." His voice was deep and carried an edge of superiority that made Laura's jaw tighten. "We know your survey teams have discovered rich mineral deposits in the systems you recently visited. You will transfer all mining coordinates to us immediately." Laura remained silent, her face neutral. She had learned long ago that sometimes the best response was to let an opponent talk themselves into revealing more than they intended. Talvex continued, apparently interpreting her silence as fear. "Do not mistake this for a request, human. This is a demand from the Crythian Dominion. We have 6 warships to your single unarmed vessel. Our weapons are charged and targeted at your ship's vital systems. Surrender the coordinates and we will allow you to leave with your lives." "And if we refuse?" Laura asked quietly. The Crythian commander's scaled features twisted into what might have been a smile. "Then we will take the information from your ship's wreckage and send your crew home in containers. The Crythian Dominion does not tolerate defiance. Lesser species must learn their place in the natural order of things." Around the bridge, Laura's crew tensed. Wesley's hands hovered over the weapons console, though she knew their small defensive systems would be useless against the firepower surrounding them. Their science officer, Patricia Hayes, had stopped her analysis work and was watching the view screen with wide eyes. Even their veteran engineer, Thomas Shaw, who had seen combat in the colony wars, looked worried. "You have 30 minutes to comply," Talvex announced. "Transfer the coordinates or we open fire. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. The Crythian Dominion has conquered 17 star systems in the past decade. Your resistance would be meaningless." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. The crew looked to Laura, waiting for orders. Some captains might have panicked. Others might have immediately begun evacuation procedures or tried to run. But Laura Bennett had not survived 15 years in deep space by being predictable. She leaned back in her command chair, a slight smile appearing on her face. It was the kind of smile that made her crew nervous because they knew it meant she was thinking several moves ahead. Wesley recognized that look and felt a small surge of hope. The captain had a plan. "Wesley, open a channel to the Crythian flagship," Laura said calmly. "Captain?" Wesley asked, confused. "Are we surrendering?" "Just open the channel." Wesley's fingers moved across his console, and moments later, Commander Talvex's face reappeared on the view screen. The Crythian looked surprised that they were responding so quickly. Perhaps he had expected them to spend the full 30 minutes arguing among themselves or preparing a futile escape attempt. "You are ready to provide the coordinates?" Talvex asked, his tone dripping with smug satisfaction. Laura stood up slowly from her chair and walked closer to the view screen. Her posture was relaxed, almost casual, which seemed to confuse the Crythian commander. She crossed her arms and tilted her head slightly, studying him the way a teacher might study a student who had just given a wrong answer. "Let me make sure I understand your position correctly," Laura said, her voice calm and measured. "You have 6 warships. You have superior firepower. You claim to have conquered 17 systems. You believe this makes you intimidating. You think 30 minutes is generous. And you expect us to simply hand over valuable information because you threatened us." "Correct," Talvex replied, clearly pleased that she understood the situation. "You see reason. Your species may be more intelligent than I assumed. Laura's smile widened just slightly. Around the bridge, her crew exchanged glances. They had worked with Captain Bennett long enough to know that smile. It meant someone had just made a very big mistake and they were about to find out exactly how big. Commander Talvex, Laura said, her voice taking on a tone that was almost friendly, I have just one question for you before I give you my answer. The Crithian leaned forward, anticipating her surrender. Speak. Laura's eyes locked onto his through the view screen. The friendly tone vanished from her voice, replaced by something cold and sharp. Is that all? Talvex blinked, his forearms tensing. What? Is that all? Laura repeated, each word clear and deliberate. 6 ships. Threats of destruction. A 30-minute deadline. A speech about your conquest. I am asking you, Commander, if that is the best you can do. Because if it is, then we have a problem. The Crithian commander's face darkened with anger. You dare mock the Crithian Dominion? You are in no position to. I am in exactly the position I need to be in, Laura interrupted, her voice cutting through his words like a knife. And you, Commander, have just made the biggest mistake of your military career. You see, you made one critical error in your calculations. And what is that? Talvex snarled. Laura's smile returned, but this time it held no warmth at all. You assumed that threats would work on humans? Commander Talvex's scaled face twisted with rage at the human captain's words. His forearms clenched into fists, and his yellow eyes blazed with indignation. No lesser species had ever spoken to him this way. No one had ever questioned the might of the Crithian Dominion with such casual dismissal. You dare speak to me with such disrespect? Talvex hissed, his voice rising. I will give you one more chance to. No, Laura interrupted, her tone still remarkably calm. You will listen. Because you clearly do not understand what you are dealing with. You think your threats frighten us because they have frightened others. But humans are not like the other species you have bullied into submission. She gestured to Wesley at the communication station. The young officer's fingers moved quickly across his console, and the main view screen split. On one side remained Commander Talvex's angry face. On the other side appeared images from Earth's history, ancient and brutal. This is Earth, Laura began, pointing to a blue and green planet rotating slowly on the screen. Our homeworld. You call it a Class 3 planet in your databases. Pleasant climate, abundant resources, suitable for life. What you failed to notice is that our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. The image shifted to show massive sheets of ice covering entire continents. Ice ages. Our ancestors survived temperatures that would freeze most species solid. They did not have technology. They had animal skins and fire. And they survived. Talvex watched with growing confusion. He had expected pleading or surrender, not a history lesson. Laura continued, her voice taking on a lecturer's tone. When the ice retreated, we faced something worse. Predators. Wesley, show him the animals we shared our world with. The screen filled with images of Earth's ancient predators. Massive cats with teeth like daggers. Bears that stood 3 meters tall. Crocodiles that could crush bones with a single bite. Wolves that hunted in coordinated packs. Snakes whose venom could kill in minutes. We had no claws, Laura explained. No armor. No venom. No natural weapons at all. We were slow, weak, and soft compared to these creatures. By every logical measure, we should have gone extinct. But we did not. Do you know why? Talvex said nothing, but his posture had shifted slightly. The confidence in his bearing had diminished just a fraction. We learned to think, Laura answered her own question. We learned to plan. We learned to work together. We turned our weakness into our greatest strength. We became persistence hunters. We did not need to be faster than our prey. We just needed to outlast them. We chased animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We tracked them for days across impossible distances. We never gave up. Patricia Hayes, the science officer, spoke up from her station. Captain, shall I show him the disease records? Please do, Laura nodded. New images appeared on the screen. Medical diagrams, historical drawings, data charts showing death tolls that climbed into millions. Plagues, Laura said simply. Diseases that killed 1/3 of our population at a time. Viruses that spread faster than we could contain them. Bacteria that evolved to resist every treatment we created. And we survived all of them. We adapted. We learned. We improved. Every catastrophe made us stronger. Thomas Shaw, the engineer, added his own commentary from his station. The Black Death, smallpox, influenza, cholera, malaria, tuberculosis. Each one should have ended us. None of them did. Laura turned her attention back to Talvex. But Commander, here is the part you really need to understand. The Ice Ages did not make us what we are. The predators did not shape us into survivors. The diseases did not forge our determination. Do you know what did? She paused, letting the question hang in the air. Each other, Laura said quietly. The most dangerous thing humans ever faced was other humans. Wesley, show him our war history. The view screen erupted with images that made even the battle-hardened Crithian commander flinch. Ancient battles with thousands of warriors clashing with swords and spears. Medieval sieges where entire cities burned. Modern warfare with weapons that could level mountains. Nuclear explosions that turned sand to glass. Orbital bombardments that scarred entire continents. We have been fighting each other for our entire existence, Laura explained. We invented weapons specifically designed to kill our own species. We created strategies to outsmart other humans. We developed technologies to counter human tactics. Every advancement we made, we first used against ourselves. Wesley pulled up statistics that scrolled across the screen. Numbers of conflicts, casualty counts, duration of wars. The data was staggering. In the past 2,000 years alone, Wesley reported, humanity has experienced over 15,000 recorded wars. Some lasted for days. Others lasted for generations. We have never known true peace. We have never stopped competing, fighting, threatening, and challenging each other. Laura walked closer to the view screen, her eyes locked on Talvex. So when you threaten us, Commander, you need to understand something fundamental about human psychology. We grew up with threats. We learned to walk while dodging predators. We learned to talk while negotiating with hostile tribes. We learned to think while planning attacks and defenses against our own kind. She spread her hands in a casual gesture. Your threat of destruction? Humans threaten each other with that every single day. Your overwhelming firepower? We have been outgunned since we were children hunting mammoths with pointed sticks. Your deadline? We evolved making split-second decisions when death was chasing us. Patricia added her perspective from the science station. The Crithian Dominion conquered 17 systems in a decade. Impressive by most standards. But humans conquered an entire planet filled with creatures trying to kill us, diseases trying to erase us, and other humans trying to replace us. And we did it without any help from advanced technology until very recently in our history. Thomas Shaw chuckled from his engineering console. You know what is funny, Commander? Your threats actually make us feel comfortable. Threats are familiar to us. Threats are normal. We know how to deal with threats because we have been dealing with them since before we discovered fire. Laura leaned forward, her voice dropping to a tone that carried absolute certainty. You think you are intimidating us. You think your 6 warships and your superior firepower give you an advantage. But all you have done is trigger millions of years of evolutionary adaptation. You have activated every survival instinct that kept humanity alive when the universe was trying to end us. She smiled that cold smile again. Threats do not scare humans, Commander. Threats motivate us. They focus us. They remind us of who we are and what we are capable of. Your mistake was not in threatening us. Your mistake was in thinking we would react like the other species you have bullied. We are not them. We are humanity. We climbed to the top of our food chain by refusing to quit when everything else would have surrendered. Talvex stared at the human captain, and for the first time since entering this conversation, doubt flickered across his features. The bridge of the Crithian flagship erupted in chaos as warning alarms screamed through every console. Talvex spun away from his conversation with Captain Bennett, his 4 arms moving frantically as he checked his sensor displays. What he saw made his blood run cold. 12 massive human warships had appeared on his screens, surrounding his entire fleet in a perfect tactical formation. They had not been there 30 seconds ago. His sensors had shown nothing but empty space. Now, suddenly he was boxed in from every direction. Impossible, Talvex breathed, his yellow eyes wide with shock. Where did they come from? How did they get past our sensors? On the view screen, Laura Bennett's smile widened. She gestured casually at the display showing the newly arrived human vessels. Stealth technology, Commander. One of humanity's proudest achievements. We have been working on it for centuries. Wesley Cooper turned in his chair to face the Crithian commander through the video link, his young face showing genuine pride. We developed it because humans spent millennia hunting each other. When you hunt something that thinks like you do, you need to be invisible. You need to be silent. You need to appear out of nowhere and strike before your enemy even knows you are there. Thomas Shaw called out from his engineering station, unable to hide his satisfaction. Those 12 ships have been following your fleet since you entered this sector 3 hours ago. You never saw them. Your sensors never detected them. They were right behind you the entire time. Talvex's mind raced as he tried to process this new reality. His tactical officer was shouting reports about the human ships. They were not diplomatic vessels like the Horizon's Edge. These were military warships, each one bristling with weapons that his computers were now frantically trying to analyze and categorize. 8 destroyers and 4 cruisers, Patricia Hayes announced cheerfully from her science station. Each destroyer carries enough firepower to disable one of your ships in a single salvo. The cruisers are heavy assault class with reinforced shields and long-range artillery. You are now looking at a combined weapons array that exceeds your fleet's capabilities by approximately 40%. Laura walked slowly back to her command chair and sat down with deliberate ease. She crossed her legs and folded her hands in her lap, looking completely relaxed despite being in the middle of what had just become a very dangerous military situation. "Let me explain how we got here, Commander," Laura said conversationally. 6 months ago, human intelligence detected Crithian military movements in this sector. We studied your patterns. We watched you threaten other species. We observed how you operate. You follow a very predictable routine. Wesley brought up tactical displays on the screen, showing maps of the sector with various routes marked in different colors. You send scout ships to identify valuable resources. Then you send diplomatic vessels to make contact. When the species proves to be weaker than you send a small battle group to threaten them. They surrender, you take what you want, and you move on to the next target. We realized you would eventually reach human territory, Patricia continued. So we prepared. We studied your technology. We learned your tactics. We waited for you to make your move. And then we gave you exactly what you were looking for. Talvex felt a sinking sensation in his chest. The mining coordinates. You wanted us to find them. Precisely, Laura confirmed. We made sure your scouts would discover our survey data. We made sure you would think we had found something valuable. We knew you would respond with a show of force. And we knew exactly where and when you would make your threat. This meeting, Commander, was not an accident. It was an invitation. Thomas Shaw added with a chuckle. The really fun part was watching your ships move into position. You thought you were surrounding us. You thought you had us trapped. But the whole time, our ships were moving into position around you. We were hunting you while you thought you were hunting us. On his tactical display, Talvex could see the positions of all the vessels clearly now. The human ships had placed themselves at optimal firing angles. Every Crithian vessel was targeted by at least 2 human warships. If fighting broke out, his fleet would be caught in a devastating crossfire with nowhere to run. This is the difference between Crithian tactics and human tactics, Laura explained, her voice taking on that lecturer's tone again. You rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. You show up with superior numbers and expect immediate surrender. It works well against species that have not spent their entire existence fighting wars. She stood up and walked toward the view screen again, her movements calm and measured. Humans learned something very important during our long, bloody history. The side that looks stronger is not always the side that wins. Wars are not won by the biggest army. They are won by the smartest strategy. And humans have been developing military strategy since before we had written language. Wesley pulled up historical examples on the screen. Ancient battles where smaller forces defeated larger armies through clever tactics. Naval engagements where outnumbered fleets destroyed superior enemies with superior positioning. Modern conflicts where intelligence and planning proved more valuable than raw firepower. We learned to use terrain, Wesley explained. We learned to use weather. We learned to use surprise. We learned to turn our enemy's strengths into weaknesses. We learned that the best time to strike is when your opponent thinks they have already won. Patricia accessed more data from her console. Your 6 warships are powerful, Commander. Each one could probably destroy the Horizon's Edge without much effort. But they were designed to fight enemies who would panic when threatened. They were designed to intimidate species who would rather surrender than risk casualties. They were not designed to fight humans. Our ships, Thomas added, were designed specifically to counter vessels like yours. We analyzed your weapon systems, your shield frequencies, your engine capabilities, your standard formations. Every weakness you have, we found. Every advantage you thought you had, we prepared to neutralize. Laura locked eyes with Talvex through the view screen. Your overwhelming force is now surrounded and outgunned, Commander. Your weapons are targeted. Your escape routes are blocked. Your reinforcements are 3 hours away at best. And every second you delay, our tactical advantage grows stronger. Wesley leaned forward in his chair, that grin still on his face. So, Commander, I will ask you the same question you asked us. You have 30 minutes to make your decision. Will you surrender your ships peacefully, or will we be forced to disable them by force? There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. What is your answer? The bridge of the Crithian flagship fell silent. Talvex stared at the human captain, realizing with growing horror that he had walked directly into a trap. He had been so confident in his superiority that he had never considered the possibility that the humans were smarter, faster, and better prepared than he was. Talvex's primary hands moved frantically across his communication console while his secondary hands worked the tactical displays. He needed reinforcements immediately. The Third Fleet had 2 carrier groups positioned just outside this sector, enough firepower to turn this ambush into a victory. His fingers flew across the controls, entering emergency codes and broadcasting distress signals on every frequency the Crithian military used. Nothing happened. The communication panel showed active transmission, but no response came back. Not even static. Not even the automated acknowledgement signals that should have activated instantly. Just silence, empty and complete. Communications officer, report. Talvex barked at his subordinate, his voice cracking with barely controlled panic. The younger Crithian worked his station desperately, trying different frequencies and protocols. Commander, all channels are being jammed. I cannot reach Fleet Command. I cannot reach our carrier groups. I cannot even contact our scout ships in adjacent sectors. Every frequency is filled with interference. On the view screen, Captain Bennett watched this activity with calm interest, as if she were observing a student working through a particularly difficult test question. She waited patiently while Talvex and his crew tried every communication method they had available. After 2 full minutes of failed attempts, Laura spoke. Are you finished, Commander? Or would you like to try a few more frequencies? We can wait. We have plenty of time. Talvex turned back to face her, his yellow eyes burning with rage and humiliation. You are jamming our communications. This is a violation of interstellar law. Military vessels have the right to contact their command structure during negotiations. Negotiations. Laura raised an eyebrow. Is that what we are having? Because 30 minutes ago, you made it very clear this was not a negotiation. You said there would be no negotiation. Those were your exact words, Commander. I am simply following your rules. Wesley turned away from his console to address the Crithian commander directly. Besides, jamming communications is actually standard human military practice. We learned a long time ago that the first thing you do in combat is cut off your enemy's ability to call for help. Isolate them. Make them stand alone. Force them to make decisions without support. We have been tracking your fleet for 6 months, Laura revealed, her tone shifting to something more serious. Not 6 hours. Not 6 days. 6 months, Commander. From the moment you entered the outer edge of human-monitored space, we knew you were there. We watched every move you made. We recorded every transmission you sent. We studied every battle tactic you employed. Patricia brought up records on the view screen, showing dates and locations of Crithian movements. The data was incredibly detailed, including ship manifests, crew rotations, supply deliveries, and tactical deployments. It was the kind of intelligence that should have been impossible to gather without inside access to Crithian military networks. How did you get this information? Talvex demanded, though he already suspected he would not like the answer. Human intelligence networks are very thorough, Patricia answered with a slight smile. We have been gathering information on the Crithian Dominion since you first appeared in this region of space. We infiltrated your supply chains. We monitored your communications. We tracked your scout ships. We even placed observers on some of the planets you conquered, speaking with the species you intimidated into surrender. Thomas Shaw pulled up additional data showing the 17 systems the Crithians had claimed in the past decade. Each system was marked with detailed notes about how the Crithian military had approached them, what threats they had made, and how quickly the native species had surrendered. You follow the same pattern every time, Thomas explained. Send scouts to find valuable resources. Make contact with the local species. Determine if they are strong enough to resist. If they are weak, you threaten them with overwhelming force. They surrender within hours and you take what you want. It has worked perfectly for you 17 times. 18 times actually, Wesley corrected. We have records of one more system you claimed before you reached this sector. The species there did not even have space travel yet. You showed up with warships and demanded tribute. They had no choice but to agree. Laura stood and walked slowly around her command chair, her hands clasped behind her back. We knew you would eventually reach human space. It was inevitable. Your expansion pattern pointed directly toward our outer colonies. So we had a choice to make. We could wait for you to threaten us and then respond with military force, which would mean casualties on both sides. Or we could prepare a scenario where you would walk into a trap of your own making. The mining coordinates, Talvex said quietly, understanding beginning to dawn on his face. You planted false information. Not false, Laura corrected. The coordinates are completely real. There are indeed extremely valuable mineral deposits in that system. We did not lie to you about that, Commander. We just did not tell you about the other things in that system. Patricia brought up a star chart showing the system in question. It was located at the edge of human territory, positioned in a strategically important location that controlled access to 3 different jump routes. The mineral deposits were marked clearly on the map, showing concentrations of rare elements that would be worth billions of credits. The mining coordinates you wanted so badly, Patricia explained, lead directly to the Sentinel system. That is where humanity's 3rd Defense Fleet is stationed. 47 warships, including 6 dreadnoughts and 12 carrier groups. The most heavily defended position in human space outside of Earth itself. The color drained from Talvex's face as he understood the full scope of what had almost happened. If he had obtained those coordinates and reported them back to his superiors, the Crithian Dominion would have sent a major invasion force directly into the heart of human military power. It would have been a catastrophic disaster. We were counting on you taking the bait, Laura continued. We needed you to threaten us first so we would have legal justification for what comes next. Interstellar law is very clear about self-defense. If you had simply asked for the coordinates politely, we would have been required to refuse politely. But you threatened us. You gave us an ultimatum. You told us you would destroy our ship if we did not comply. Wesley added with satisfaction, which means everything we are doing right now is completely legal under the Galactic Convention treaties. You initiated hostile action. We responded with appropriate defensive measures. Any tribunal in civilized space would rule in our favor. Thomas pulled up communication logs showing the entire conversation that had just taken place. Every word, every threat, every ultimatum was recorded in perfect detail. We have evidence of your aggression, Commander. We have proof that you threatened a peaceful diplomatic vessel. And we have 12 warships as witnesses to verify that our response was proportional and justified. Laura leaned forward, her expression growing more intense. Here is what is going to happen next, Commander Talvex. You are going to order your fleet to power down weapons and submit to human authority. Your ships will be escorted to a neutral station where your crews will be processed and eventually returned to Crithian space. You personally will carry a message back to your Dominion leadership. She paused, letting her words sink in. The message is simple. Humanity is not like the other species you have conquered. We do not surrender to threats. We do not bow to intimidation. And we do not forgive unprovoked aggression. The next time Crithian ships enter human space, they will do so as diplomatic envoys or trade partners, not as conquerors. Is that clear? The silence on the Crithian flagship bridge stretched for what felt like an eternity. Talvex stared at Captain Bennett through the view screen, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides. All the confidence that had filled him an hour ago had drained away completely. He felt hollow, defeated, and worst of all, foolish. His tactical officer waited for orders that did not come. His weapons officer kept glancing between his commander and the sensor displays showing the 12 human warships that surrounded them. His communications officer had given up trying to break through the jamming and sat quietly at his station. Commander, his second-in-command said quietly, what are your orders? Talvex closed his eyes for a moment. In his long military career, he had never faced defeat. The Crithian Dominion had built its reputation on overwhelming force and successful intimidation. He had personally commanded the fleets that brought 6 different species to their knees. He had been decorated, promoted, and praised for his effectiveness. Now he understood that all those victories had been hollow. He had never faced a real challenge. He had never encountered an opponent who refused to be intimidated. He had been practicing military theater, not actual warfare. And the humans had just taught him the difference. Power down weapons, Talvex said, his voice barely above a whisper. Commander, his tactical officer asked, clearly shocked. Power down all weapons, Talvex repeated, louder this time. Lower shields. Transmit our surrender to the human fleet. It is over. On the view screen, Captain Bennett nodded with something that might have been respect. A wise decision, Commander. Your crew will be treated well. You have my word on that. Over the next 30 minutes, The 6 Crythian warships went through the humiliating process of surrendering to a force they had intended to threaten into submission. Human boarding teams arrived to secure critical systems and ensure compliance. They were professional and efficient, treating the Crythian crews with courtesy but also with unmistakable authority. Talvex watched it all happen from his command chair, feeling each moment like a physical blow to his pride. His warriors, trained for combat and conquest, stood aside while human soldiers moved through their ships. No shots were fired. No resistance was offered. The defeat was complete and bloodless. Captain Bennett transported over to the Crythian flagship personally, accompanied by Wesley Cooper and a small security detail. She walked onto the bridge like she owned it, her posture confident but not arrogant. She approached Talvex's command chair and looked up at the tall Crythian commander. "Stand up, please," Laura said simply. Talvex rose slowly to his full height, which was nearly half a meter taller than the human captain. Even in defeat, his physical presence was impressive. But they both knew that size meant nothing in this situation. "You are going to return to your people," Laura told him. "Your ships will be escorted to the neutral station at Kepler's Point. Your crews will be held there for 72 hours while we process the legal documentation for this incident. After that, you will all be released and allowed to return to Crythian space." Talvex nodded silently. It was far more generous than he had expected, and certainly more generous than his own people would have been in similar circumstances. "However," Laura continued, "you will carry a message to your Dominion leadership. I need you to deliver this message personally, Commander. Not through official channels. Not through diplomatic correspondence. You personally will stand before your superiors and tell them what happened here today." "What message?" Talvex asked. Laura's expression grew serious. "Tell them that humans do not respond well to threats. Tell them that we have spent 10,000 years threatening each other, and we have gotten very good at it. Tell them that every tactic they think is clever we invented thousands of years ago. Tell them that intimidation does not work on a species that grew up being intimidated by everything in their environment." Wesley stepped forward and handed Talvex a data storage device. "This contains full records of our encounter. Video, audio, sensor logs, everything. Your people can analyze it and verify that we are telling the truth about human capabilities. They can study our tactics and technology. We are not hiding anything from them." "Why would you give us this information?" Talvex asked, confused by the gesture. "Because we want you to understand," Patricia Hayes said, having transported over with a second team. "We do not want war with the Crythian Dominion. We do not want to conquer your territory or threaten your people. But we need you to understand that threatening us is pointless. We cannot be intimidated into submission. The sooner your leadership accepts that, the sooner we can build a proper relationship." Thomas Shaw added, "Besides, knowing our capabilities and still choosing peace is far more meaningful than surrendering because you have no other choice. We want the Crythian Dominion to respect humanity, not fear us. There is a difference." Laura placed a hand on Talvex's arm, the gesture surprisingly gentle given the circumstances. "You made a mistake today, Commander. You underestimated an opponent because they looked weak. You assumed that superior firepower meant automatic victory. These are common mistakes that many species have made throughout history. The important thing is whether you learn from this mistake." Over the following 3 days, the Crythian crews were processed and prepared for release. Human military personnel treated them well, providing food, medical care, and even entertainment during their brief detention. It was nothing like the harsh treatment that prisoners usually received in Crythian custody. When the time came for departure, Talvex stood on the observation deck of the neutral station and watched his ships being returned to him. They had been cleaned, their systems checked and repaired where necessary, and their supplies restocked. The humans had even fixed some minor damage that had existed before the encounter. Captain Bennett came to see him off personally. "Safe travels, Commander. I hope the next time we meet, it will be under better circumstances." "Captain Bennett," Talvex said slowly, "may I ask you a question?" "Of course. If I had refused to surrender, would you really have destroyed my fleet?" Laura was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. "Yes," she said finally. "We would have disabled your ships and captured your crews with minimal casualties if possible. But if you had forced us to fight, we would have fought to win. That is what humans do, Commander. We do what is necessary to survive. We learned that lesson millions of years ago, and we have never forgotten it." Talvex nodded slowly. "I will deliver your message. And I will recommend to my superiors that we approach humanity differently in the future. That is all we ask," Laura said. 6 months later, A very different Krithian delegation arrived in human space. They came in civilian transports, not warships. They requested permission to enter human territory through proper diplomatic channels. They brought trade proposals, cultural exchange programs, and formal apologies for the earlier incident. The lead diplomat was not Talvex, but the former commander had personally briefed the delegation before their departure. He had told them everything about his encounter with the humans. He had shown them the recordings. He had explained in detail how thoroughly he had been outmaneuvered. Most importantly, he had warned them about the question that Captain Bennett had asked. Never ask a human if that is all they have, Talvex had said, because they will always show you more. They will always have another plan, another tactic, another surprise ready. That is how they survived on their death world. That is how they became a spacefaring species. And that is why threatening them is the worst mistake you can make. The new diplomatic mission was successful. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchange programs were established. Scientific cooperation began. The Krithian Dominion and humanity found common ground and mutual benefit in peaceful cooperation. In the Krithian military academies, the encounter at Horizon's Edge became required study material for every officer candidate. It was taught as a lesson in humility, in understanding your opponent, and in recognizing when intimidation tactics would fail. Talvex himself occasionally gave lectures on the subject, though he never enjoyed reliving his defeat. Captain Laura Bennett continued her career in human diplomatic and military service. The Horizon's Edge incident earned her a promotion and recognition as one of humanity's most effective negotiators. But she rarely spoke about it publicly, preferring to let her actions speak for themselves. Wesley Cooper, Patricia Hayes, and Thomas Shaw all received commendations for their roles in the successful operation. They continued serving together under Captain Bennett's command, becoming something of a legendary crew in human space fleet circles. And throughout the galaxy, other species began to learn an important lesson. Humans were not like other species. They could not be threatened into submission. They could not be intimidated by superior numbers. They had survived too much, fought too hard, and learned too well to ever back down from a challenge. The question, "Is that all?" became something of a dark joke among military commanders of various species. It was the question you never wanted to hear from a human, because it meant you had already lost and just did not know it yet.